The first note was wrong, not slightly off, not close enough to ignore, wrong, deliberately, impossibly wrong. Naomi Reed's fingers froze above the keys of the century-old Steinway grand piano. Her perfect pitch, the gift that had defined her entire life, screamed at her that something was deeply, intentionally broken about this instrument. The second note confirmed it, and the third note made her hands tremble. Because these weren't random mistakes. These weren't the result of age or neglect or poor maintenance. Someone had tuned this piano wrong on purpose. Someone had encoded a message into the very fabric of its sound. And as Naomi played the sequence again, tears began streaming down her face. Because the melody, these wrong notes, created this impossible pattern of deliberately mistuned keys, was spelling out something she never thought she'd find. Her name. Her mother's voice. Her entire history hidden inside an instrument that had been waiting 100 years for someone with ears like hers to unlock its secrets. But how did she get here? How did a 28-year-old piano tuner with no family, no past, and no connections find herself in the music room of one of New York's wealthiest families, crying over a piano that knew things about her she didn't even know about herself? The answer begins 3 days earlier. 3 days before Naomi Reed discovered that everything she thought she knew about who she was, where she came from, and why she'd spent her entire life feeling like she was waiting for something, was about to change forever. This is the story of how 3 wrong notes revealed a century of silence. How a mother's love found a way to speak across death itself. And how the most valuable inheritance isn't always money or property or status. Sometimes it's just the truth. Naomi Reed had been tuning pianos for 6 years. 6 years of visiting homes she'd never be able to afford, touching instruments worth more than she'd earn in a lifetime, and then returning to her studio apartment in Brooklyn, where the only piano she owned was a 40-year-old upright with 3 broken keys she couldn't afford to fix. But she was good at what she did. Better than good. Because Naomi had something most piano tuners spent decades trying to develop and never quite achieved. She had perfect pitch. Not relative pitch, where you can identify notes based on other notes you've already heard. Not trained pitch, where years of practice teach your ear to recognize patterns. Perfect pitch. The ability to hear any sound and immediately, instinctively know exactly what note it is without any reference point whatsoever. Only 1 in 10,000 people are born with it. Naomi was one of them. She could hear a car horn and tell you it was a B-flat. A microwave beep was an F-sharp, was the hum of fluorescent lights. The world wasn't just sounds to Naomi. It was a symphony, every noise cataloged and identified and filed away in her mind as a specific, precise note. It made her exceptional at her job. It also made her lonely. Because how do you explain to someone that you can't just hear music you can feel when it's wrong? How do you tell someone that being in a room with an out-of-tune piano physically hurts? That every slightly flat note, every sharp that's wandered a few cents too high, feels like nails on a chalkboard directly to your soul? You don't. You just do your job, collect your payment, and go home to an empty apartment where at least the silence doesn't hurt. Naomi had been doing this for 6 years. 6 years of trying not to think about the fact that she had no family, no history, no connection to anything or anyone. She'd grown up in the foster care system. 5 different homes before she turned 18. None of them kept her long enough to feel permanent. None of them loved her enough to make her feel like she belonged. The only constant in her life had been music. A social worker had noticed her humming perfect harmonies when she was 7 and got her into a music program. That's where someone had tested her and discovered her gift. That's where she'd learned piano. That's where she'd found the only thing that made sense in a world that never quite felt like home. But even music couldn't answer the questions that kept her up at night. Who were her parents? Why had they given her up? Did she have siblings somewhere? Did anyone in the world share her blood, her history, her face? The foster care records said almost nothing. Mother unknown. Father unknown. Found abandoned at a hospital when she was 3 days old. No note. No explanation. No name except the one the nurses had given her, because someone had to call her something. Naomi. It meant pleasant, delightful, agreeable. She'd always hated it. How could you name an abandoned baby something that meant pleasant? What was pleasant about being left behind? But she kept the name because it was the only thing she had that had been hers from the beginning, even if someone else had chosen it for her. She was thinking about all of this on a cold Tuesday morning in November when her phone rang with a number she didn't recognize. The voice on the other end was clipped, professional, efficient, the kind of voice that belonged to someone who worked for people rich enough to have other people make their phone calls. Is this Naomi Reed, the piano tuner? Yes, this is Naomi. I'm calling on behalf of the Whitmore family. We have a Steinway grand piano that requires tuning. It's a 1925 Model D. Are you familiar with instruments of this caliber? Naomi's heart skipped. A 1925 Steinway Model D wasn't just a piano. It was history. It was art. It was one of the finest instruments ever made from the golden age of piano manufacturing, when every component was crafted by hand, when wood was selected for its acoustic properties from forests that no longer existed when the goal wasn't profit, but perfection. She'd read about them, studied them, dreamed about them, but she'd never actually worked on one. Yes, she said, trying to keep her voice steady. Yes, I'm familiar with them. Excellent. The family would like you to come to the estate on Thursday morning at 10. The address is… Wait, Naomi interrupted. The Whitmore estate. As in the Whitmore family. The real estate developers. There was a pause. The kind of pause that made it clear the person on the other end wasn't used to being interrupted. Yes, the Whitmores. Is that a problem? Naomi knew the name. Everyone in New York knew the name. The Whitmores had been building Manhattan for 3 generations. Hotels, office buildings, luxury apartments. They owned enough of the city that you probably couldn't walk 5 blocks without passing something with their name on it. Old money, real money. The kind of money that didn't just buy things, it bought legacy. No, Naomi said quickly. No problem at all. Thursday at 10. I'll be there. She wrote down the address with shaking hands. An estate in the Upper East Side. Of course. Where else would they live? After she hung up, Naomi sat in her apartment for 20 minutes, just staring at the address. This was the kind of job that could change everything. If she did well, if the Whitmores were impressed, word would spread. Wealthy families talked to other wealthy families. One good job could lead to 10 more, maybe 20. Maybe she could finally afford to fix her own piano. Maybe she could finally feel like she was building something instead of just surviving. Thursday morning, Naomi took the subway to the Upper East Side and walked the last 6 blocks to the address she'd been given. With every step, the buildings got taller, the cars got more expensive, and Naomi felt smaller. By the time she reached the Whitmore estate, she felt like she might disappear entirely. The Whitmore estate wasn't just a house. It was a statement. 4 stories of limestone and glass that took up half a block, with windows that probably cost more than most people's homes, and a front door that looked like it belonged on a cathedral. Naomi checked her reflection in a parked car's window, straightened her jacket, and rang the bell. A housekeeper answered. She looked Naomi up and down with an expression that made it very clear what she thought of piano tuners who showed up in second-hand blazers and scuffed boots. But she stepped aside and gestured for Naomi to enter. The inside was exactly what you'd expect. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, art that probably required its own insurance policy. Everything perfect, everything pristine, everything carefully curated to announce that the people who lived here were better than you and wanted to make sure you knew it. "Mr. Whitmore will see you in the music room," the housekeeper said, already walking away. "Follow me." They walked through hallways that seemed to go on forever, past rooms Naomi only glimpsed through open doors. A library with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves. A dining room with a table that could seat 20. A sitting room with furniture that looked like it had never been sat on. Finally, the housekeeper stopped at a set of double doors, knocked once, and pushed them open without waiting for a response. "The piano tuner," she announced, and left before Naomi could even say thank you. The music room was enormous, probably 30 feet long, with windows along one wall that looked out onto a private garden. There were instruments everywhere, a harp in one corner, a cello on a stand, a violin in a glass case that might have been a Stradivarius. And in the center of the room, under a skylight that poured natural light onto its ebony surface, was the Steinway. Naomi forgot to breathe. It was beautiful. Not just beautiful, transcendent. The wood gleamed like it had been polished that morning. The lid was open, revealing the strings inside, tight and perfect and waiting. The keys were ivory, real ivory, from before. It was band yellowed just slightly with age in a way that somehow made them more precious. This wasn't just a piano. This was a piece of history. This was something that had been played for 100 years, that had probably made music for people who were legends, now that had survived wars and depressions and countless changes of fashion, and still remained perfect. Naomi took a step forward, her hand reaching out before she could stop herself. "I wouldn't touch it yet." The voice made her jump. She turned and saw a man standing in the doorway she'd just come through. Tall, probably early 30s, with dark hair, and the kind of face that was handsome in a cold, distant way. He wore a suit that probably cost more than her rent for 6 months, and he looked at her the way you might look at something you found on the bottom of your shoe. "You must be the piano tuner," he said. Not a question. A statement, like he'd already decided everything he needed to know about her. "Naomi Reed," she said, holding out her hand. He looked at her hand like she'd offered him something contaminated, then finally shook it with the minimum contact possible. "Daniel Whitmore. This piano belonged to my grandfather. He died 6 months ago and requested in his will that it be properly maintained. Hence you. The way he said you made it very clear that Naomi was an inconvenience, a task to be completed, something temporary that would be gone soon and forgotten faster." "It's a beautiful instrument," Naomi said, trying to keep her voice professional. "A 1925 Model D is incredibly rare. I'm honored to work on it. Yes, well, I'm sure it's very exciting for you." Daniel walked past her toward the piano, running his hand along the edge of the lid. "Personally, I think it's a waste of space. I'm planning to sell it once you've finished. Apparently, it's worth quite a bit to collectors." Naomi felt something twist in her chest. Sell it. This piano had been in his family for 100 years, and he was just going to sell it. "Have you ever played it?" she asked, before she could stop herself. Daniel looked at her like she'd asked him if he'd ever eaten garbage. "No, I don't play piano. Never saw the point. My grandfather was obsessed with this thing, spent hours in here every day until he got too sick to leave his bed. But I have better things to do with my time than make noise on an antique. Make noise. He called it making noise. Naomi clenched her jaw and focused on the piano instead of the urge to tell this privileged, dismissive man exactly what she thought of him. Well, she said, pulling out her tuning equipment from her bag, let me take a look and see what needs to be done. Fine, I'll be in my office. Try not to touch anything else in the house. He left without another word, leaving Naomi alone in the music room with the Steinway. She took a deep breath, released it slowly, and approached the piano. Time to see what this instrument could tell her. Naomi sat down at this piano bench and flexed her fingers. This was always her favorite moment. That instant before she touched an instrument when it was still full of possibility, when she didn't yet know what story it would tell her. She pressed middle C, and immediately knew something was wrong. The note that came out wasn't C, or rather it was C, but it was flat. Not by much, maybe 10 cents. But to Naomi's perfect pitch, it might as well have been a completely different note. She frowned and tried the next key. C sharp, also flat, about the same amount. D flat, D sharp, flat, E flat. Naomi's frown deepened. This wasn't normal wear and tear. Pianos didn't go out of tune in a uniform pattern like this. They drifted randomly different strings responding to different environmental factors, temperature, humidity, age. You'd expect some keys to be sharp, some flat, some perfect. Chaos, not order. But this was ordered. Every single note in the middle octave was exactly 10 cents flat. Naomi moved to the lower register. Same thing. Every note uniformly flat by the same amount. Upper register, same pattern. She sat back and stared at the keys. This wasn't possible. This wasn't how pianos worked. Unless someone had tuned it this way on purpose. But why? Why would anyone deliberately tune a piano wrong? It was like building a clock that ran backwards or painting a portrait with all the colors inverted. It served no purpose except to create something fundamentally broken. Naomi stood up and walked around the piano, examining it from every angle. The exterior was perfect. No damage, no signs of tampering. The strings inside looked immaculate. The hammers were in good condition. Everything about this piano suggested it had been meticulously cared for, except the tuning. She sat back down and played a simple C major scale. The notes came out, but they were wrong. All wrong. They created a harmony that shouldn't exist, a melody that her perfect pitch told her was impossible. And then she heard it. Not the notes themselves, but the pattern. The relationship between the wrong notes. The way they deviated from concert pitch in a specific, consistent way. Like a code. Like a language. Naomi's heart started beating faster. She pulled out her tuning fork and struck it. A perfect A440. Concert pitch. The standard by which every instrument in the world is tuned. She held it next to the A key on the piano and played them simultaneously. The piano's A was flat by exactly 10 cents. She moved to the G, flat by 15 cents. F, flat by 12 cents. E, flat by 10 cents. D, flat by 18 cents. The numbers were different. The pattern wasn't uniform across the entire piano. Different keys had different amounts of deviation. But it wasn't random. There was structure here, organization, purpose. Naomi grabbed a notebook from her bag and started writing down every key and its exact deviation from concert pitch. She worked methodically, moving from the lowest note to the highest, testing each one, recording the numbers. It took her 45 minutes to complete the entire keyboard. When she was done, she stared at the page of numbers. 88 keys, 88 numbers. A pattern that meant something if she could just figure out what. She heard footsteps behind her and turned to see Daniel standing in the doorway. "Are you finished?" he asked impatiently. "No," Naomi said. "I need more time." "How much more time? You've been in here for almost an hour." "This piano has been deliberately tuned incorrectly," Naomi said. "Every key is off by a specific amount. It's not damage or age. Someone did this on purpose." Daniel's expression didn't change. "So tune it correctly and be done with it. But don't you want to know why? Don't you want to know who did this and what it means? No. I want a piano that's worth what the appraiser says it's worth so I can sell it and move on with my life. That's what I want." Naomi looked at him, at his cold eyes and his dismissive expression, and felt something she hadn't felt in years. Anger. "Your grandfather spent hours with this piano. Every day," she said. "You said that yourself? Don't you think there might be a reason he kept it tuned this way? Don't you think maybe he was trying to tell you something?" "My grandfather was 93 years old when he died," Daniel said flatly. "He probably didn't even remember how a piano was supposed to sound. Now please, just do your job so we can both move on." He left again, and this time Naomi let him go without arguing. Because she'd made a decision. She wasn't going to tune this piano correctly. Not yet. First, she was going to figure out what it was trying to say. Naomi spent the next hour analyzing her numbers. She tried everything she could think of, converting the deviations to letters using A equals 1, B equals 2, looking for mathematical patterns. Fibonacci sequences prime numbers, treating the numbers as coordinates, as dates, as codes. Nothing worked. The pattern remained stubbornly meaningless. She was about to give up when she remembered something her first piano teacher had told her. Music isn't math. Math is the language we use to describe music, but music itself is something else. Music is emotion translated into sound. If you want to understand music, you have to feel it, not calculate it. Naomi looked at the piano. What if the code wasn't in the numbers themselves? What if it was in the music? She sat down at the bench again and started playing, not trying to tune out the wrongness this time, but leaning into it, listening to the dissonance, the strange harmonies, the way the mistuned notes created unexpected relationships with each other. She played a C major chord. It came out wrong, but not cacophonous. The notes still harmonized, just in a different way, like a familiar song played in a minor key, recognizable, but transformed. She kept playing, moving through different chords, different progressions, and slowly she started to hear something. Not words exactly, but meaning, pattern, structure. The lower notes, the ones that were tuned the most flat, created a bass line, a rhythm. Boom, 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 like a heartbeat. The middle notes filled in harmony, creating texture, depth, emotional color. And the highest notes, the ones in the upper register, those created melody. A tune so faint she almost missed it, buried under all the wrong notes and strange harmonies. But it was there. Naomi played it again, focusing only on the highest notes, the melody. It was simple, just a few notes repeated in a pattern, but it was deliberate, intentional. She hummed along as she played at her perfect pitch, automatically identifying each note, even though they were tuned wrong. And then she realized what she was humming. Not just random notes. Words. The melody was spelling out words using a system she'd learned in music theory class years ago and had almost forgotten. A equals A, B equals B, C equals C. But also D equals D, E equals E, F equals F, G equals G. And then it repeated. H equals A again, I equals B, J equals C. It was simple. It was elegant. It was brilliant. Each note corresponded to a letter. The melody was literally spelling something out, using music as language. Naomi grabbed her notebook and started transcribing. She played the highest notes again, this time writing down the letter that corresponded to each one. F-O-R. Her hand was shaking. M-Y. She kept playing, kept writing. D-A-U-G-H-T-E-R, for my daughter. Naomi stopped playing. Her vision was blurring. She blinked and realized she was crying. For my daughter. The piano was carrying a message. Someone had encoded words into the tuning itself, creating a melody that would only make sense to someone with perfect pitch. Someone who could hear the exact notes even when they were wrong. Someone who could translate music into language. Someone like her. But whose daughter Daniel's grandfather's daughter? That would be Daniel's mother or aunt. Why would he leave a message for them in a piano? Unless... Naomi played the rest of the melody, translating each note into a letter. For my daughter, Naomi. The room tilted. Naomi. Her name. Her name was in the piano. A piano that had belonged to Daniel Whitmore's grandfather. A piano that was 100 years old, that had been in this family for generations, that had been meticulously maintained until 6 months ago when the old man died. For my daughter, Naomi. It wasn't possible. It couldn't be possible. But her perfect pitch didn't lie. The notes were what they were. The message was what it was. For my daughter, Naomi. Naomi stood up so fast the piano bench fell over. She backed away from the piano like it might attack her, her breath coming in short gasps. This wasn't real. This was a coincidence. It had to be a coincidence. There were thousands of Naomis in the world. This message could be for any of them. It didn't mean anything. It didn't mean what's wrong. She spun around. Daniel was in the doorway again, looking at her with an expression that might have been concern if he was capable of concern. The piano Naomi managed. The message. It says my name. What are you talking about, the tuning? It's a code. The notes spell out words. It says, for my daughter Naomi. My name. It says my name. Daniel stared at her. For a long moment he didn't move. Then he walked into the room slowly like he was approaching something dangerous. Show me, he said. Naomi's hands were shaking so badly she could barely play, but she managed to demonstrate the melody pointing to each key as she explained how the notes translated to letters. Daniel listened in silence. When she finished, he sat down on the couch against the wall and stared at the piano like he'd never seen it before. That's not possible, he finally said. I know. My grandfather, he didn't have a daughter named Naomi. He had one daughter. My mother. Her name is Victoria. I know it doesn't make sense, Naomi said. But the message is there. I can prove it. The tuning is too precise to be accidental. Someone created this deliberately. Daniel ran his hand through his hair. For the first time since Naomi had met him, he looked uncertain. My grandfather was a complicated man, he said slowly. He built this family's fortune from almost nothing. He was brilliant, ruthless, absolutely devoted to legacy and reputation. But he was also... Daniel paused. He could be cruel, especially about things that threatened the family image. What do you mean? I mean, he was the kind of man who cared more about appearances than people. If something or someone made the family look bad, he removed them. Completely. Like they never existed. Naomi felt cold. Are you saying he had another daughter? One he... removed, I don't know. I was never told about anyone else. But... Daniel looked at Naomi. Really looked at her for the first time. How old are you, 28? And you don't know who your parents are? No. I was found abandoned when I was 3 days old. No records, no family, nothing. Daniel stood up and started pacing. 28 years ago. That would have been... He stopped. 1996. I was 4 years old. I don't remember much from that time, but I remember my grandfather being furious about something. There was yelling, doors slamming, and then silence. Like whatever had been upsetting him just stopped. Do you know what it was about? No. I was too young, and no one ever talked about it. But Daniel pulled out his phone. Wait here. He left the room quickly. Naomi sat down on the couch, her mind racing. This couldn't be real. The Whitmores couldn't be her family. It was too big, too impossible, too much like something out of a novel. But the piano didn't lie, and her perfect pitch had never been wrong. Daniel came back 15 minutes later, carrying a large box. He set it on the floor and started pulling out photo albums. These are my grandfather's personal albums, he said. The housekeeper has been organizing his things. I haven't looked through them yet, but if there's any evidence of another daughter, it might be here. They went through the albums together. Page after page of family photos. Daniel's grandfather as a young man building his first property. His wedding. The birth of his daughter Victoria. Family vacations, business events. Charity galas. And then in an album from the mid-1990s they found a photo of a young woman, maybe 25 years old, beautiful with dark skin and eyes that looked directly at the camera with something between defiance and sadness. She was standing in this very music room next to the Steinway, her hand resting on its lid. Daniel stared at the photo. I've never seen her before in my life. Naomi couldn't breathe, because she had seen her before. In the mirror, every single day. The woman in the photo looked exactly like her. Who is she? Naomi whispered. Daniel flipped the photo over. On the back, in faded ink, someone had written a single word. Cassandra. Cassandra, Daniel repeated. I don't know anyone named Cassandra. She's not in any of the other albums. Just this one photo. Naomi took the picture with trembling hands. The woman's face was her face. The shape of her eyes, the curve of her jaw, even the way she stood with one hip slightly higher than the other, something Naomi had always done without thinking. This woman was related to her. Had to be. The resemblance was too exact, too complete. She's wearing a necklace, Naomi said, pointing to the photo. The woman had a silver chain around her neck with a small pendant. Can you see what it is? Daniel took the photo and examined it closely. It looks like a treble clef, a musical note, a treble clef. Music, piano, the Steinway. She was a musician, Naomi said. That's why she's in this room. That's why she's standing with the piano. Daniel set the photo down and looked at Naomi with an expression she couldn't read. If she was my grandfather's daughter, and if she was somehow connected to you, then that means... We might be related, Naomi finished. You and I. We might be family. The word felt strange in her mouth. Family. Something she'd never expected to have. And now, maybe impossibly, she might be sitting in a room with someone who shared her blood. But Daniel didn't look happy about this possibility. He looked scared. My grandfather never mentioned her, he said. Not once. If she was his daughter, if she existed, he erased her completely. Why would he do that? You said he cared about family image, about reputation. Yes, but what could she have done that was bad enough to be removed from the family entirely? And if he disowned her, why would he leave a message for her daughter in a piano? None of this makes sense. Naomi stood up and walked back to the Steinway. She ran her hand along the keys, feeling the ivory under her fingertips. The message doesn't stop at my name, she said quietly. There's more. I only translated the first part. The melody continues. Then translate the rest. Naomi sat down and played the full melody again, slowly, carefully translating each note. For my daughter Naomi, I am sorry. I was wrong. You belong here. She stopped playing and looked at Daniel. I was wrong, she repeated. He admitted he was wrong. About what? Daniel shook his head. I don't know, but we need to find out more about Cassandra. If she was his daughter, there have to be records. Birth certificates, school records, something. And if she was my mother, Naomi asked, the words feeling both impossible and inevitable. Then we need to find out what happened to her. Why she left you. Where she went. And why my grandfather felt guilty enough to encode an apology into a piano. They stared at each other across the music room. Two strangers who might be family. Two people connected by a 100-year-old instrument and a message that had been waiting for someone to hear it. Will you help me? Naomi asked. Will you help me find out the truth? Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. Yes. Because if she was my aunt, then I deserve to know about her. And if you're her daughter, then... He paused. Then you deserve to know who you are. Naomi felt something crack open in her chest, something that had been locked tight for 28 years. Hope. They started with his obvious. Daniel called his mother Victoria and asked her point blank if she'd had a sister named Cassandra. There was a long silence on the phone. Then Victoria said, "Where did you hear that name?" Daniel's expression changed. So there was a Cassandra. Another pause. Yes. She was my half-sister. My father's daughter from before he married my mother. But she's gone. She's been gone for almost 30 years. Why are you asking about her now? Because I found something. A photo and a message. Mom did. Cassandra have a daughter. The silence that followed was different. Heavy. Weighted with things unsaid. I don't know, Victoria finally answered. Cassandra left when I was 15. My father forbade us from ever speaking about her again. I don't know what happened to her after that, but she could have had a daughter. Daniel, what is this about? I'll explain later. But I need to know everything you know about Cassandra. Please. Victoria sighed. Come to the house tonight. I'll tell you what I remember. But Daniel, be prepared. This isn't a happy story. After he hung up, Daniel looked at Naomi. My mother's expecting us at 7. We have a few hours. Let's see what else we can find. They spent those hours going through every box in the estate that contained his grandfather's personal effects. There wasn't much. The old man had been systematic about destroying evidence of things he wanted forgotten. But they found a few pieces. A birth certificate for Cassandra Whitmore, born in 1971. A few school photos from the 1980s. And at the bottom of a box labeled Miscellaneous, a journal. It was leather-bound expensive, with his grandfather's initials embossed on the cover. Daniel opened it carefully. The entries were sporadic years between some of them. It wasn't a diary in the traditional sense, more like a place where he recorded thoughts he didn't want to share with anyone else. They found the entry dated August 15th, 1996. Cassandra is gone. I told her to leave and never come back. I will not have her choices destroy what I built. She made her decision. Now she must live with it. The family is better off without her. Daniel's jaw tightened. He threw her out. His own daughter. Why? Naomi asked. What choice did she make that was so terrible they kept reading? A few entries later, dated September 3rd, 1996. Victoria asked about Cassandra today. I told her to never speak that name again. What's done is done. Cassandra chose that musician over her family. She chose poverty over legacy. She made her bed. If she has a child, it's not my problem. I will not acknowledge them. I will not bring that shame into this house. Naomi felt like she'd been punched. That musician. She was with someone he disapproved of. More than disapproved, Daniel said quietly. He disowned her because of who she loved. They found one more entry. This one dated 5 years ago, after his grandfather had been diagnosed with terminal cancer. I saw Cassandra's daughter in a coffee shop today. Or I think it was her. She has Cassandra's face. She was carrying a piano tuner's toolkit. The irony is not lost on me. I wanted to speak to her, to tell her the truth, but I could not find the words. How do you apologize for stealing someone's entire history? How do you tell someone that you erased their mother from existence out of pride and fear? I am a coward. I always have been. But I can leave her something. A way to find the truth when I am gone. If she has her mother's gift for music, she will understand. She will hear what I cannot say. The entry ended there. Naomi set the journal down with shaking hands. He saw me. 5 years ago. He knew who I was, and he said nothing. But he left you the message, Daniel said. In the piano. He encoded everything you needed to know. He just needed someone with perfect pitch to find it, like my mother, Naomi whispered. That's why she's standing next to the piano in that photo. She must have had perfect pitch, too. That's where I got it from. Daniel nodded slowly. And that's why my grandfather chose this method. The piano was hers. The music was hers. He turned her instrument into a message that only her daughter could decode. Naomi looked at the Steinway, seeing it differently now. Not just an instrument. A time capsule. A confession. A bridge between a mother she'd never known and a grandfather who'd had too much pride to apologize while he was alive. There's more to the message, she said. I haven't finished translating it all. There are at least 3 more phrases encoded in the tuning. Then let's hear the rest, Daniel said. Let's find out what else he needed to say. Before they could return to the piano, Daniel's phone rang. It was his mother. Daniel, I found something while I was looking for information about Cassandra. You need to see it. Can you come now instead of tonight? They drove to Victoria's house in silence. Naomi's mind was racing. She was close to something. Close to answers she'd spent her entire life looking for. But she was also terrified. What if the truth was worse than not knowing? What if her mother had abandoned her for reasons that made Naomi wish she'd never found out Victoria lived in a penthouse on the Upper West Side? She was waiting for them. When they arrived, a woman in her 50s with perfectly styled hair and the kind of poise that came from a lifetime of wealth. She looked at Naomi with an expression Naomi couldn't quite read. You look just like her, Victoria said quietly. Like Cassandra. It's remarkable. You have something to show us, Daniel prompted. Victoria nodded and led them to her study. On the desk was an old shoebox, the kind that had probably once held expensive shoes, but now was stuffed with papers and photographs. After my father disowned Cassandra, I kept everything I could find that had her in it. I hid this box from him. He never knew I'd kept her memory alive, even in this small way. She opened the box and started pulling out photos. Cassandra as a child, as a teenager. Always smiling, always vibrant, always looking like she was about to burst into laughter or song. And then Victoria pulled out a photo that made Naomi's heart stop. It showed Cassandra holding a baby. The baby was wrapped in a hospital blanket, tiny and perfect, with a shock of dark hair and eyes that were just beginning to focus on the world. On the back of the photo, in Cassandra's handwriting, was written, Naomi, my beautiful girl, born October 23rd, 1996, the best thing I ever did. Naomi took the photo with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. That baby was her. That was her mother holding her. That was the only moment they'd ever had together, captured in a single photograph. "Where did you get this?" Naomi managed to ask. "Cassandra sent it to me," Victoria said. "About a week after you were born. It was the only communication I had from her after she left. She wanted me to know about you. She wanted someone in the family to know you existed. But if she wanted me to be known, why did she abandon me?" Victoria's expression softened with something that looked like pain. "I don't think she abandoned you by choice. I think something happened. Something that forced her hand." "What do you mean?" Victoria pulled out another photo. This one showed Cassandra standing with a man. He was tall, handsome, black, with a saxophone in his hands, and a smile that matched Cassandra's. They were looking at each other like they were the only two people in the world. "That's James Bennett," Victoria said. "Jazz musician. Brilliant by all accounts. He and Cassandra met at a concert when she was 24. They fell in love. My father lost his mind when he found out. Because James was black," Naomi said flatly. Victoria nodded, looking ashamed. "My father was a product of his generation and his class. He believed in maintaining standards, which meant he believed in racism, even if he didn't call it that. When Cassandra told him she was pregnant with James's child, he gave her an ultimatum. Leave James and give the baby up for adoption to a suitable family, or be disowned completely. And she chose to be disowned," Daniel said. "Yes, she chose James. She chose you. She left with nothing except her music and her love for James. My father cut her off completely. No money, no support, no family. She and James tried to make it work. They got married. They were happy from what I heard through friends. But Naomi asked because she could hear the but coming." Victoria's eyes filled with tears. "But James died. About 2 months after you were born. Car accident. He was coming home from a gig late at night and a drunk driver hit him. He died instantly. The room was silent. Cassandra was devastated," Victoria continued. "She had a 2-month-old baby, no money, no job, no family support. She tried to keep you, tried to make it work, but she was falling apart. And she knew she couldn't give you the life you deserved. So she left me at a hospital," Naomi said, her voice breaking. "She left you somewhere you would be safe," Victoria corrected gently. "Somewhere you would be found and cared for. She didn't abandon you out of cruelty. She abandoned you out of love, because she was drowning and she didn't want to take you down with her." Naomi felt tears streaming down her face. "What happened to her? Where is she now?" Victoria looked at Daniel, then back at Naomi. "I don't know. After she left you at the hospital, she disappeared. I hired a private investigator years later to try to find her, but there was no trace. It was like she vanished." "She could still be alive," Naomi said desperately. "She could be out there somewhere." "Maybe," Victoria said softly. "But Naomi, it's been 28 years. If she wanted to be found, if she wanted to find you, she could have. The fact that she hasn't suggests what Victoria didn't answer, but her expression said everything. Suggests she's dead. Suggests she's been dead for years, maybe decades. Suggests that the mother Naomi had just found out about was already gone before Naomi even knew to look for her." Daniel put his hand on Naomi's shoulder. "There's more," he said quietly. "In the piano. More to the message. Maybe that will tell us what we need to know." Naomi nodded, not trusting her voice. They had to go back to the estate. They had to finish decoding the message, because now Naomi knew who had sent it, and she needed to know what else he had to say. Back at the estate, Naomi sat at the Steinway with a new understanding. This piano had been Cassandra's. Her mother had played these keys, had probably sat on this very bench, had filled this room with music. And now her grandfather, the man who had destroyed Cassandra's life, had turned that same piano into a confession. Naomi played the melody again, this time translating everything. The message was long encoded across multiple octaves, using not just the highest notes, but the middle register too, creating a complex pattern that only someone with perfect pitch and musical training could hope to decode. For my daughter, Naomi, I am sorry. I was wrong. You belong here. Your mother loved you more than life. She gave up everything for you. I took that from her. I took you from her. This is my fault. Naomi's hands froze on the keys. He took me from her, she whispered. What does that mean? Daniel was reading over her shoulder from her notes. Keep going. There's more. Naomi continued playing, translating. Cassandra came back. 3 years after she left you, she came back to beg for help. She was sick. She had nowhere else to go. I turned her away. I told her she made her choice and had to live with it. I told her you were better off without her. I watched her leave, and I never saw her again. 2 years later, I learned she had died. Alone. In a homeless shelter. Because I was too proud to help my own daughter. Naomi couldn't see through her tears. Daniel had to take over reading her notes aloud as she continued to play and translate. I tried to find you after Cassandra died. I searched for years, but the foster care system wouldn't tell me where you were. They said she had voluntarily given up her rights, that there was no family on record. I couldn't prove you were my granddaughter. I had no legal standing, so I watched from a distance. I saw you grow up. I saw you struggle, and I did nothing because I couldn't swallow my pride enough to tell you the truth. Daniel's voice cracked. Jesus. He watched you your whole life and never said anything. Naomi kept playing. The melody was getting more complex now, the notes faster, more urgent, like her grandfather was running out of time to say everything he needed to say. This piano was Cassandra's favorite. She played it every day when she lived here. She had perfect pitch, just like you. I saw you once in that coffee shop with your tuning equipment. I knew then that you had inherited her gift. So I created this message. I tuned this piano myself, note by note, encoding everything I needed to tell you. Everything I couldn't say when I was alive. The melody shifted, became softer, sadder. Naomi, my granddaughter. You were never abandoned because you were unlovable. You were abandoned because the world was cruel. Because I was cruel. Because your mother loved you so much she thought giving you up would give you a better life. She was wrong. I was wrong. We were all wrong. But you were never the mistake. You were never the problem. You are Cassandra's daughter. You are my granddaughter. You are a Whitmore. And you always have been. Naomi stopped playing. She couldn't continue. Her entire body was shaking with sobs. Daniel knelt down beside the piano bench. There's one more section. Can you finish it? Naomi nodded and forced herself to keep playing. The final section was short. Just a few notes in the lowest register. This house is yours. This piano is yours. The money, the estate, everything. I changed my will. If you find this message, if you decode it, everything I own becomes yours. Because it always should have been Cassandra's. And now it's yours. Welcome home, Naomi. Welcome home. The silence after the final note was absolute. Naomi sat at the piano, her hands still on the keys, and tried to process what she'd just learned. Her entire life, everything she'd believed about who she was and why she'd been abandoned, all of it was wrong. She hadn't been unwanted. She'd been desperately wanted. Fought for, loved so much that her mother had sacrificed everything, including her own life, to try to do what was best. And she'd been robbed. Robbed of her mother by a drunk driver. Robbed of her family by her grandfather's pride. Robbed of her entire history because no one had the courage to tell her the truth. Naomi, Daniel said gently, "Say something, please. This house is mine, she asked, her voice hollow. According to what he wrote, yes. If he changed his will, then legally everything should be yours. I don't want it. What Naomi stood up and faced him. I don't want his money. I don't want his house. I don't want his guilt or his apology or his estate. He watched my mother die alone in a shelter and did nothing. He watched me grow up in foster care and did nothing. And then he dies and thinks he can fix it by leaving me money. No. I don't want it. Daniel looked at her with something that might have been respect. Then what do you want? I want to know more about her. About Cassandra. I want to see everything you have. Every photo, every letter, every scrap of evidence that she existed. I want to know who my mother was before your grandfather destroyed her life. Okay, Daniel said immediately. Okay, we can do that. My mother has more photos, more stories. We can. And I want this piano, Naomi interrupted. Not because it's valuable, because it was hers, because she played it, because it's the only thing I have that she touched. It's yours. Of course it's yours. Naomi looked around the music room, at the instruments, the luxury, the overwhelming wealth that had surrounded her grandfather while her mother died in poverty. Why did he do this? She asked. Why did he encode all of this in a piano instead of just telling me when he was alive? Why make it so complicated? Because he was a coward, Daniel said simply. He couldn't face what he'd done. So he hid his confession in a place where you might never find it. He put the burden on you to discover the truth instead of having the courage to tell you himself. He saw me, Naomi said. 5 years ago, in a coffee shop. He knew who I was, and he walked away. I know. My mother came back. She asked for help, and he turned her away. I know. She died alone because of him. I know. Naomi turned to face Daniel fully. You're his grandson. You're part of this family. You're part of the system that killed her. Daniel didn't flinch. Yes. I am. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry for all of it. I'm sorry you went through what you went through. I'm sorry I can't change it. I'm sorry. Stop, Naomi said. Just stop. I don't want apologies. I want... She trailed off. What did she want? What could possibly make this right? Nothing. There was nothing that could make this right. Her mother was dead. Her grandfather was dead. The years she'd lost, the family she'd never known, all of it was gone and couldn't be recovered. But there was one thing she could have. I want to know her, Naomi said firmly. I want to know everything about Cassandra. I want to know what she loved, what she dreamed about, what kind of music she played. I want to know her so well that when I think about her, she's not just a name or a face in a photo. I want to know her like a daughter should know her mother. Daniel nodded. Then we'll do that, together. Because... He paused. Because she was my aunt. And you're my cousin. And maybe I can't change the past, but I can make sure you're not alone in the present. Cousin. Family. Words that had never applied to Naomi before. She looked at Daniel, really looked at him, and saw that he was crying too. Okay, she said quietly. Okay, let's learn about her together. Over the next week, Naomi and Daniel pieced together Cassandra's life from fragments. They found more photos in Victoria's collection. They tracked down old friends of Cassandra's who remembered her. They found recordings of her playing piano, her perfect pitch, evident in every note. And slowly, a picture emerged. Cassandra Whitmore had been brilliant. Not just talented brilliant. She'd been accepted to Juilliard at 17. She'd been on track to become a concert pianist. But she'd fallen in love with jazz instead, with improvisation, with the freedom of music that didn't follow rules. That's how she'd met James. at a jazz club in Brooklyn where she'd gone to hear him play. He was the saxophonist. She was the pianist who sat in for a few songs and ended up playing the whole night. They'd made music together. Not just literally, though they'd performed as a duo all over the city, but in the way they lived. Everything was improvisation, spontaneity, joy. They were happy in a way that didn't need money or stability or approval. But Cassandra's father, Naomi's grandfather, couldn't understand that kind of happiness. To him, success meant wealth. Security meant control. And his daughter choosing poverty with a black jazz musician over privilege with an approved suitor was unacceptable. The fight had been legendary. Cassandra had stood in this very music room and told her father that she would rather have nothing with James than everything without him. So he gave her nothing. And for a while it worked. Cassandra and James were poor but happy. They got married in a tiny ceremony with just a few friends. They found an apartment in Brooklyn. They played music every night. And then Cassandra got pregnant. That's when things got harder. Gigs dried up as Cassandra's pregnancy progressed. Money got tighter. They started fighting about practical things, bills and diapers, and how they were going to afford a baby. But they loved each other. They were going to make it work. And then James died. Victoria showed Naomi the article from the newspaper. Local musician killed in traffic accident. James Bennett, 29, died when his car was struck by a drunk driver on his way home from a performance. He left behind a wife, Cassandra, and an infant daughter. Cassandra had fallen apart. Victoria had tried to help, sending money, secretly offering to let Cassandra come back. But Cassandra's pride, the same pride that had gotten her into this situation, wouldn't let her accept help from the family that had disowned her. She tried to keep going, tried to raise Naomi alone, but she was drowning in grief and poverty and the overwhelming responsibility of a baby she couldn't afford. So she made a choice. She left Naomi at a hospital with a note that said only, "Her name is Naomi. Please take care of her. I can't." And then she disappeared. For 3 years, Victoria had no idea where Cassandra was. She hired investigators, but they found nothing. It was like Cassandra had erased herself. And then one day, Cassandra showed up at the estate. Victoria had been home alone. She'd opened the door to find her half-sister on the doorstep, thin to the point of starvation, sick, desperate. "I need help," Cassandra had said. "Please. I'm dying." Victoria had tried to bring her inside, but their father had appeared. And he'd taken one look at Cassandra and said, "You're not welcome here. Leave." "Dad, please," Victoria had begged. "She's sick. We have to help her. She made her choices. Now leave my house or I'll call the police." Cassandra had looked at her father with eyes that held no anger, just profound sadness. "What happened to Naomi?" she'd asked. "Is she okay?" "I don't know, and I don't care," he'd said. "She's not my problem. She's your granddaughter. I have no granddaughter." Cassandra had nodded, like she'd expected nothing less. And then she'd left. Victoria had tried to follow her, but their father had physically held her back. By the time Victoria got free, Cassandra was gone. 2 years later, Victoria received a call from a hospital. Cassandra had died. She'd been living in a homeless shelter. She'd had pneumonia, but it had progressed to sepsis because she'd had no money for medical care. She'd died alone with no family by her side. Victoria had claimed the body and paid for a funeral. She'd buried Cassandra in a small cemetery in Queens. And she'd never forgiven her father. "I stopped speaking to him after that," Victoria told Naomi. "For years. I finally reconciled with him when he got sick, but I never forgot what he did. And I never forgave him." Naomi sat in Victoria's living room holding a photo of her mother and tried to comprehend the waste of it all. A talented woman, a loving mother, a person who deserved so much better than what the world had given her. Dead at 31 because of pride and prejudice and cruelty. Where is she buried? Naomi asked quietly. Victoria wrote down the address. The cemetery was small and simple. No elaborate monuments, no grand mausoleums, just simple headstones marking the places where regular people rested. Cassandra's grave was in the back corner under a tree. The headstone was modest. Just her name, her dates, and a single engraved image. A treble clef. Naomi stood in front of the grave for a long time, not knowing what to say. This was her mother. The woman who had given her life, had loved her enough to let her go, had died thinking Naomi hated her, or had forgotten her, or had never known she existed. "Hi, Naomi," finally said. "I'm Naomi, your daughter. I don't know if you can hear me. I don't know if you're anywhere at all. But I needed to come here. I needed to see you." The wind rustled the leaves above her head. "I found out about you," Naomi continued. "I found the piano. I decoded grandfather's message. I know what happened now. I know about James. I know about the foster care. I know about all of it." Her voice broke. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I'm sorry you went through that alone. I'm sorry no one helped you. I'm sorry your father was such a bastard. I'm sorry James died. I'm sorry you couldn't keep me. I'm sorry for all of it." She knelt down and placed her hand on the headstone. "But I want you to know something. You didn't fail. You didn't fail as a mother. You gave me the only thing that mattered. You gave me life. And you gave me your gift, your perfect pitch, your love of music. Every time I sit at a piano, I'm connected to you. Every time I hear a note and know exactly what it is, I'm using the ability you gave me." Naomi pulled out the photo she'd found, the one of Cassandra holding baby Naomi in the hospital. "I'm going to be okay," she said. "I found family. Daniel, your nephew. Victoria, your sister. They're helping me. They're making sure I know who you were. They're making sure you're not forgotten." She stood up, tears streaming down her face. "I love you, Mom. I never got to say that while you were alive. But I'm saying it now. I love you. And I'm going to make you proud. I'm going to use the gift you gave me. I'm going to make music. And every note I play, every piano I tune, every time I hear the world singing, I'll think of you." She placed the photo at the base of the headstone, weighted down with a small stone so it wouldn't blow away. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for everything you sacrificed. Thank you for loving me enough to let me go. Thank you for being my mother." Naomi stayed there for another hour, just sitting in the grass next to her mother's grave. And for the first time in her life, she didn't feel alone. When Naomi finally left the cemetery, Daniel was waiting for her in his car. He didn't ask if she was okay. He just drove her back to the estate in silence. But when they got there, instead of going inside, Naomi walked around to the back garden. There was a bench there overlooking the private lawn, and she sat down heavily. Daniel sat beside her. "I don't know how to feel," Naomi said after a long time. "I finally have answers. I finally know who I am and where I came from. But it's all so sad. It's just sad. I know. Your grandfather could have saved her. He had all the money in the world. He could have brought her home, gotten her medical care, helped her get back on her feet. And he chose not to. He chose to let his own daughter die rather than admit he was wrong. I know. How do I accept an inheritance from someone like that? How do I live in his house, use his money, benefit from a fortune that was built on the same pride that killed my mother?" Daniel was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "What if you don't think of it as his fortune? What if you think of it as Cassandra's fortune, the inheritance she should have had, the money that should have supported her and helped her raise you?" What if this is just the universe correcting a wrong? That's a nice way to frame it, Naomi said. But it doesn't change the fact that accepting it feels like forgiving him. And I don't forgive him. Then don't accept it for you. Accept it for her. Use it to do what she couldn't. Support artists. Help single mothers. Fund music programs for kids who can't afford them. Turn his legacy into her legacy. Naomi looked at Daniel. Is that what you'd do? I don't know. But I think it's what Cassandra would want. She didn't care about money, but she cared about people. She cared about music and joy and making the world less harsh. Maybe that's how you honor her. Not by rejecting everything, but by transforming it. Naomi nodded slowly. I need time. To think. To figure out what I want. Take all the time you need. But Naomi, Daniel hesitated. You should know that I filed papers this morning to officially recognize you as family, to add you to the Whitmore family records. You'll have proof now, legal proof that you're Cassandra's daughter, that you're my cousin, that you belong. Why would you do that? Because it's the truth. And because I think Cassandra would want you to have it. She wanted you to be known. She wanted you to be part of the family. My grandfather took that from you. I'm giving it back. Naomi felt fresh tears starting. Thank you, she whispered. Daniel put his arm around her shoulders. It was awkward, stilted, the embrace of two people who barely knew each other but were trying to figure out how to be family. But it was enough. That evening, Victoria hosted a dinner. Just the three of them in her penthouse with wine and good food and hours of conversation about Cassandra. Victoria told stories Naomi had never heard, about Cassandra as a child already showing signs of her musical genius, how she'd taught herself to play piano by ear before she had any formal lessons, how she'd driven their father crazy by refusing to practice classical pieces and instead improvising her own music. She was fearless, Victoria said, smiling through tears. She didn't care what anyone thought. She just wanted to create beauty, make people happy, live honestly. She sounds amazing, Naomi said. She was. She was one of the best people I've ever known. And I miss her every single day. They looked through more photos. Cassandra at her high school graduation. Cassandra performing at a recital. Cassandra laughing with friends, her face lit up with pure joy. You have her smile, Victoria said, pointing at a photo, and her hands, piano hands, long fingers, strong but elegant. Naomi looked at her own hands, seeing them differently now. These were her mother's hands, her mother's gift. What was her favorite piece to play? Naomi asked. Victoria thought for a moment. She loved Debussy. Clair de Lune. She said it sounded like moonlight felt, soft and mysterious and full of longing. I know that piece, Naomi said softly. I've tuned pianos while people played it. I've always loved it. Maybe that's genetic, Victoria said with a sad smile. Maybe you inherited her taste along with her talent. As the evening went on, Naomi felt something shifting inside her. The anger was still there. The grief was still there. But underneath it, something else was growing. Belonging. For the first time in her life, she was sitting with people who shared her blood, who knew her history, who could tell her stories about where she came from. She wasn't alone anymore. I want to accept the inheritance, Naomi said suddenly, but on one condition. What condition? Daniel asked. That we establish a foundation, in Cassandra's name, to support musicians who are struggling, single parents in the arts, music programs in underserved communities. I want to make sure that no one else goes through what my mother went through. No one else should have to choose between their art and survival. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. She would love that. She would absolutely love that. And I want to restore this estate, Naomi continued. Make it a place where musicians can come to create. A residency program free of charge, a place where artists can just focus on their work without worrying about rent or food or whether they'll make it to next month. Cassandra's house, Victoria said. That's what you should call it. Cassandra's house, Naomi repeated. Yes, I like that. Daniel raised his wine glass. To Cassandra, and to her daughter who's going to make sure her legacy lives on. They clinked glasses, and for a moment, Naomi could almost feel her mother there with them, smiling, proud, finally at peace. The next morning, Naomi returned to the music room. The Steinway was still there, still tuned to its impossible, deliberate wrongness. She sat down at the bench and just looked at the keys for a long time. This piano had belonged to her mother. Her mother had played these exact keys, had probably sat on this exact bench, had filled this room with music that Naomi would never get to hear. But in a way, her mother's music was still here, encoded in the tuning, hidden in the notes, waiting for someone with perfect pitch to unlock it. Naomi placed her hands on the keys and began to play. Not the encoded message this time, just music. She played from memory, letting her fingers find the notes without thinking, trusting her perfect pitch to guide her. And what came out was Clair de Lune, her mother's favorite piece. She played it all the way through, letting the mistuned notes create strange, haunting harmonies. The piece sounded different on this piano. Not wrong, exactly. Just transformed, like a familiar song in a minor key, like moonlight through tears. When she finished, Naomi sat in silence, her hands still on the keys. And then she heard it. A memory, not visual, but auditory. A voice singing softly. A lullaby. The melody was simple, just a few notes repeated, but Naomi knew with absolute certainty that she'd heard it before, when she was a baby. Before she was left at the hospital, her mother singing to her. The melody was encoded in the piano, hidden in the tuning pattern. The same notes that spelled out the message also created this lullaby when played in sequence. Her mother's voice preserved in the instrument she'd loved. Naomi played the lullaby over and over, memorizing it, letting it sink into her soul. This was her mother. This was the sound of being loved, being held, being precious to someone. This was what she'd been searching for her entire life. Connection. I thought I'd find you here. Naomi turned to see Daniel in the doorway. I was just playing, she said, listening to her. Daniel walked over and stood next to the piano. Can I ask you something? Of course. What are you going to do with it? The piano? Naomi looked at the Steinway. I'm going to keep it exactly as it is, never tune it correctly, leave her message intact, and I'm going to play it every day so that her music never stops, so that her voice is always in this house. I think she'd like that. I hope so. They stood together in silence, both looking at the piano that had changed everything. Thank you, Naomi said quietly, for helping me find her, for not turning me away when I showed up with this crazy story, for accepting me. Your family, Daniel said simply. That's what family does. Family, the word that had never belonged to Naomi before, but it belonged to her now. 6 months later, the Whitmore estate had been transformed. The music room was the same, preserved exactly as it had been, with the Steinway still tuned to its deliberate wrongness. But the rest of the house had changed. The formal dining room was now a rehearsal space. The library was full of sheet music and recording equipment. The guest rooms had been converted into small studios where musicians could live and work. Cassandra's house was open. The first residency class was 12 artists, pianists, singers, composers, instrumentalists, All of them struggling. All of them talented. All of them given 3 months to just create without worrying about rent or food or whether they'd have a career. Naomi walked through the house, listening to the sounds of music coming from every room. A soprano practicing scales, a cellist working through a difficult passage, a pianist improvising the notes floating through the air like birdsong. This is what the house was supposed to be. Not a monument to wealth or status or family pride, but a place where art could thrive, where musicians could find community and support and the freedom to take risks. Cassandra would have loved it. Naomi had moved into the estate, not because she wanted the luxury, but because it felt right to live in the house her mother should have grown up in, to walk the same halls, to sleep in what had been Cassandra's childhood bedroom. She'd kept her job as a piano tuner, but now she only worked with musicians who couldn't afford to pay full price. The rest of her time was spent running the foundation, managing the residency program, and playing piano for hours every day. Sometimes Victoria came to visit. Sometimes Daniel stopped by. They were family now in a real way. Not perfect, not without complications, but genuine. They'd had Cassandra's body moved to the family plot. She was with the Whitmores now, where she should have been all along. The old headstone with the treble clef was still there, but now it was in a place of honor, surrounded by family. Naomi visited the grave every week. She'd bring flowers, she'd play recordings of the residents' music, she'd tell her mother about everything that was happening, all the artists they were helping, all the music that was being created in her name. And every time she felt her mother listening. One evening, as the sun was setting, Naomi sat at the Steinway and played her mother's lullaby. The residents had gathered in the music room, standing quietly listening. When she finished, one of them asked, "What was that, a lullaby my mother wrote?" Naomi said. "She encoded it in the tuning of this piano. I discovered it 6 months ago. It's beautiful." She was beautiful and talented, and she deserved so much better than what life gave her. "But look what you're doing in her name," another resident said. "Look at all the people you're helping, the music you're enabling, the artists who can breathe now because of you. That's her legacy, not the sadness. This." Naomi looked around the room, at the musicians who had found a home here, at the instruments that were played every day, at the space that had been transformed from a monument to wealth into a sanctuary for art. "You're right," she said softly. "This is her legacy, and I'm going to make sure it continues forever." Over the following months, Cassandra's house grew. They added more residency spots. They started a scholarship program for music students. They partnered with schools to bring piano lessons to kids who couldn't afford them. Every initiative was funded by the inheritance Naomi had accepted. The money that had been built on pride and cruelty was being used to combat those exact things, to help people who were struggling, to support artists who needed a chance. Naomi's grandfather had wanted to build a legacy. He'd wanted to be remembered as someone important, someone powerful, someone who mattered. And he'd failed. But Cassandra, who had wanted nothing more than to make beautiful music and love freely, was succeeding beyond anything she could have imagined. Her name was on a foundation that was changing lives. Her house was full of music every single day. Her daughter was thriving, building something meaningful. That was real legacy. Not money or property or status, but impact, change, making the world less harsh for the people who came after you. Cassandra had done that. Even in death, even after everything she'd lost, she was still making the world better. And Naomi was proud to be her daughter. On the anniversary of finding the message in the piano, Naomi held a concert. Not a formal performance, Just an evening where the residents played for each other, sharing the work they'd created during their time at Cassandra's house. The music room was packed. Victoria was there. Daniel was there. Even some of Cassandra's old friends had come wanting to see what had been created in her name. Naomi sat at the Steinway and played the complete encoded message, explaining what each section meant as she went. The audience listened in amazed silence as the story unfolded. A daughter's love, a father's regret. A message that traveled through time and death to finally reach the person it was meant for. When she finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. "My mother never got to live the life she deserved," Naomi said to the audience. "But I'm living it for her. Every day I spend in this house, every musician I help, every note I play is for her. Because she gave me everything she had, even when she had nothing. She gave me life. She gave me perfect pitch. She gave me a love of music that will never die." She stood up from the piano. So if you're listening to this story wherever you are, whatever struggles you're facing, remember this: you are not your circumstances. You are not the things that were done to you. You are not the family that rejected you or the systems that failed you. You are the choices you make, the love you give, the beauty you create. My mother's life was hard. She suffered. She died too young. But she also loved fiercely. She chose integrity over comfort. She chose art over approval. And in doing that, she taught me how to live. So live honestly, love completely. Make music whatever form that takes for you. And when life gets hard, when the world feels impossible, when you don't know where you belong or who you are, remember that somewhere encoded in the very fabric of existence, there's a message waiting for you. A message that says you belong, you matter, you are loved. Thank you. The audience erupted in applause. People were crying, hugging, sharing stories about their own families and struggles and moments of finding belonging. And in that moment, Naomi felt her mother's presence more strongly than ever. Not as a ghost, not as a memory, but as a legacy, as a foundation, as a truth that would echo through every life she touched. Cassandra Whitmore had been silenced in life. But in death, through her daughter, her voice would never stop singing. And that was the most perfect pitch of all.